Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking closely at some transcribed interview excerpts.
Right, featuring Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and these are dated today, May 8th, 2025, so very current.
Exactly. It follows his rendition, and the transcript covers, well, court proceedings and his answers to questions about his role and, certain groups and events.
Yeah, the idea here is to really get into what Kanu is saying. What points is he stressing about his leadership, his movement's nature, all that?
Our mission really is to understand his perspective as presented in this specific interview.
And it's just his perspective, of course, from this transcript. We need to unpack what he emphasizes, maybe what he glosses over.
Okay, so the transcript actually kicks off with a little side note about the judge, Justice Amadosho, needing some help with the court's tech.
Bit of color, scene setting.
Just setting the scene. But then the interviewer dives right in. Pretty direct question. You gave instructions to people to attack federal infrastructures.
Whoa, yeah, straight to the point. And Kanu's response is interesting. He talks about Biafrans being Republican in nature.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, he seems to me they act independently. They don't just take dictation, as he puts it. It kind of challenges that idea of him having, total push-button control.
So he's distancing himself from direct command responsibility for specific actions.
It seems that way, or at least framing it differently, which leads to the interviewer's follow-up, basically saying, but you pass instructions to your people.
And how does he handle that?
He makes a distinction. He says, okay, he leads the movement, but the day-to-day stuff, that's handled by the Directorate of States, the DOS.
Okay. So like a strategic leader versus an operational manager. Setting the vision maybe, but not micromanaging action.
Precisely. It suggests an organizational structure.
Yeah.
But, it also raises that classic question, where does the buck stop?
Yeah.
Especially when actions lead to violence or illegality.
That is the core issue, isn't it? Then there's a bit about the timeline. The interviewer focuses on things after NSARS.
Right, and Kanu pushes back a little. He suggests, hey, why not ask about earlier stuff, like 2015 to 2017?
Why do you think he does that, redirecting the focus?
Could be. Maybe he feels the narrative from that earlier period is, let's say, more favorable. Or perhaps he thinks understanding that period is key to the present. It's definitely a deliberate shift.
But the interviewer does press on recent events, specifically mentioning attacks in 2021.
Yes, and Kanu acknowledges something significant there. He mentions the army killing many people, so he's not shying away from acknowledging deep conflict and casualties.
A very serious point. Yet, despite all this, even when asked about jailbreaks possibly resulting from his instructions, he keeps repeating a core message.
Which is?
The movement I lead is not violent. He says it again and again in this part of the transcript.
That's a crucial claim, isn't it? Trying to define the movement's essence, despite, documented violence. It really makes you think about how leaders navigate that gap between rhetoric and reality.
It does. Then there's a small but telling detail about language. The interviewer says, arrested.
And Kanu corrects him.
Instantly. Says he wasn't arrested, he was kidnapped.
That's a huge difference in framing. Kidnapped implies illegality and abduction, not a lawful process. It speaks volumes about his perspective on his rendition.
Absolutely. Finally, the ESN comes up, Eastern Security Network. The interviewer asks, what's your relationship with the ESN?
And his answer?
He calls ESN a vigilante group that exists everywhere in Biafra land. Kind of normalizing it, maybe. Defining it broadly rather than as, say, his personal militia.
So presenting it as a widespread, almost organic phenomenon, rather than something directly under his singular command.
Okay. So to quickly recap the key takeaways from this excerpt, Kanu denies ordering attacks directly, highlights followers' independence, separates his leadership role from the DOS's operations.
He points to an earlier time frame for context, acknowledges army killings, insists his movement is nonviolent, strongly refutes arrested for kidnapped, and defines ESN as a general vigilante group.
Quite a lot packed in there. It presents this real contrast, doesn't it? The interviewer's questions imply direct control, influence, maybe even orders.
While Kanu consistently pushes back, emphasizing decentralization, independent action, and a nonviolent philosophy, despite acknowledging conflict.
So thinking about this dynamic, what does it really suggest to you, our listener, about the incredible complexities of leadership, especially in decentralized movements facing state power?
Yeah, and what other questions pop into your mind when you hear these exchanges? What pieces of the puzzle feel like they're still missing, based just on this slice of the conversation?
Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.